Before the war, James Miller had never seen the ocean. He had grown up in a quiet town tucked between cornfields and the slow bend of the Ohio River, the kind of place where people measured time by harvests and church bells, not by gunfire or headlines. He was 19, with a soft accent, a stubborn streak, and the kind of smile that came easy before the world grew heavy. His father ran a small dairy farm. His mother read him Bible verses at night when storms rolled across the plains. When the draft came, she handed him a small notebook, brown leather, worn at the edges. "Write when you can't talk, Jimmy," she'd said. That book would become his diary, and his last voice when the noise grew too loud. Now, 2 years later, James Miller stood at the docks of Portsmouth, England. It was June 5th, 1944. The air was cold, wet with mist and oil. Ships stretched as far as the eye could see, gray silhouettes against a restless sea. Soldiers moved among them like ghosts in khaki, their helmets glinting faintly under low-hanging lamps. Miller belonged to the 1st Infantry Division, the big red one. He was one man among thousands. But tonight, each soldier carried the same burden, the knowledge that tomorrow they would step into history. He opened his notebook, shielding it from the drizzle. His handwriting trembled slightly. June 5th, 1944. They say tomorrow is the big day, the one that ends this war. I don't know if I believe that, but I do know this. I'll be there when the world turns. He looked out toward the dark horizon, the hum of engines vibrating through the deck. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we cross." By nightfall, the docks roared with motion. Trucks groaned, cranes swung, officers barked last-minute orders into the wind. Miller followed Sergeant Hanley aboard their landing craft, LCI L-94, a steel vessel that smelled of salt, grease, and men's fear. The deck rattled beneath his boots as the engines came to life. "Find a spot, boys," Hanley called, his voice rough and steady. "You'll be living with it for a while." Miller dropped his pack beside his best friend, Corporal Davis, a wiry man with dark humor and a laugh that came easy even now. "You ready for a swim?" Davis grinned. "Only if it's in a pond back home," Miller replied. Their laughter was soft, nervous, but it cut through the cold for a moment. Above them, the sky hung low and colorless. The moon slipped between clouds like a secret. Soldiers huddled together, sharing cigarettes, stories, prayers. One hummed, "Swing low, sweet chariot," his voice cracking in the wind. A chaplain moved quietly through the ranks, offering blessings. Some men took them. Some didn't. Inside the dim cargo hold, Miller wrote again. "We leave at midnight. The sea is rough tonight. Davis says we'll be in France before breakfast." I can't tell if he's joking. There's a strange peace among us, like the world is holding its breath. He closed the notebook and pressed it against his chest. Around him, the hum of the engines grew louder, constant, alive, unstoppable. The docks began to drift backward. The ships pulled away one by one until the harbor lights became distant stars swallowed by fog. Miller felt it then, the pull of destiny. Thousands of men, thousands of hearts, all moving toward one fragile promise. Freedom. The English coast disappeared behind them. Ahead, only darkness, a black sea stretching endlessly toward occupied France. The waves rose and fell, slamming against the hull. Spray-coated faces, soaked uniforms, stung eyes. Miller gripped the railing, knuckles white, eyes on the faint outline of the man beside him. "Cold enough for you?" Davis shouted over the wind. Miller managed a smile. "Reminds me of winter mornings in Ohio, only wetter and louder." The craft pitched violently. One soldier vomited over the side. Another muttered prayers under his breath. Somewhere, someone began to sing, off-key, nervous, a few lines of "You Are My Sunshine." It was absurd, beautiful, and heartbreaking all at once. Diary 1:15 a.m. The sea feels endless. Every wave feels like a test. We're packed shoulder to shoulder, men from New York, Texas, Kansas, all pretending we're not scared. I think about home, about Mom's voice on Sunday mornings. I don't know if I'll ever hear it again. The convoy stretched as far as the eye could see, an armada of more than 5,000 vessels. Destroyers cut paths through the dark, their decks lit faintly by signal lamps. Naval guns loomed like watchful giants. As they moved deeper into the channel, flashes flickered on the horizon, distant thunder or maybe artillery. The men fell silent. Corporal Davis broke it gently. "That's not weather, Jimmy." Miller nodded. The war was already waiting. Hours dragged on. Rain came and went. The sea smelled of salt and diesel. Somewhere out there, a ship hit a mine. The explosion a low, muffled roar that made every man look up and listen. Diary, 3:40 a.m. They told us to rest. No one can. The engines hum like a heartbeat. Some men sleep sitting up, their helmets tilted forward. Others stare at nothing. I wonder if courage is just another word for exhaustion. By the time the first light bled into the horizon, the sea had changed color. No longer black, but a gray-blue churned by wind and wake. Men stirred, blinking against the cold, staring toward the faint outline of France. "Land," someone whispered. It sounded almost sacred. Miller squinted. At first he saw only mist, then cliffs, long stretches of pale sand beneath them, the coast of Normandy, Omaha Beach. Naval ships loomed in formation, their decks alive with sailors loading shells the size of milk cans. Planes droned overhead, wave after wave of C-47s, heading inland with paratroopers already falling behind enemy lines. The air trembled with energy, something between fear and fate. Captain Morgan moved down the line, shouting over the roar. "Listen up! You'll hit the beach at H hour. Keep low, move fast, don't stop for anyone. We get off that sand or we die on it. Understood?" A ragged chorus of, "Yes, sir," answered back. Miller's hands shook slightly as he loaded his M1 Garand. He checked the clips, wiped the rain from his helmet, and took one long breath. Diary, 5:12 a.m. I can see the coast now. The sun's trying to rise, but the clouds keep it prisoner. Davis says we'll make it, but his voice sounds like he's trying to convince himself. I keep thinking, every man here is someone's son, someone's brother. Somewhere, a mother's lighting a candle for us. Suddenly, the sky cracked open, not with dawn, but with fire. Naval guns thundered to life. Massive shells screamed overhead, tearing the air apart. Explosions blossomed along the coast, flashes of orange and smoke that made the cliffs look like the gates of hell. The deck rattled beneath their boots. The smell of cordite and sea spray filled the air. God Almighty, Davis muttered. For nearly 30 minutes, the bombardment continued, deafening, relentless. It was supposed to soften enemy defenses, destroy the machine guns, clear the way. When it stopped, The silence was worse. The only sound was the sea, and the faint, distant echo of German guns answering back. Diary, 6 a.m. They say the shelling cleared a path. I don't believe it. Not with that sound, that sharp, angry echo from the shore. It's like the land itself is warning us away. The engines roared again. The flotilla began to move in closer. Men braced themselves. "All right, boys," Sergeant Hanley shouted. "This is it." Miller's pulse hammered in his ears. He looked at Davis, who grinned weakly. "See you on the sand, Jimmy." "Count on it," Miller replied. The landing craft surged forward, cutting through waves and fear. Ahead, smoke curled across the coast, and the world seemed to hold its breath once more. Then, chaos. As they neared the beach, the world erupted again. German artillery screamed from the bluffs. Mortars splashed around them. Machine gun fire cut through the morning air, a metallic storm. The first landing craft ahead of them vanished in a column of water and fire. Men screamed. Debris rained down. The boat beside them took a direct hit. Splintered wood, twisted steel, and silence. "Down!" Hanley shouted. "Keep your heads down." Miller crouched low, heart pounding so hard he thought it might tear through his chest. The ramp ahead loomed closer. 20 seconds to landfall. Diary, 6:32 a.m. This is it. The air tastes like metal. I can hear men praying. The sea's red already. I swear it's red. I keep thinking of home. The wind smells like cordite and salt. The craft jolted. Sand beneath its hull. The ramp clanged open. "Go, go, go!" Miller moved, stumbling into waist-deep water. Bullets hissed around him like hornets. The surf was full of bodies, gear, blood. The cold stabbed through his uniform like knives. He ran, or tried to. Every step felt like dragging his legs through concrete. He tripped, fell, crawled. Around him, men shouted names that vanished into gunfire. The beach ahead was a nightmare. Explosions tearing craters in the sand, medics dragging the wounded behind flimsy obstacles. Miller dove behind a steel barrier, gasping for breath. Davis landed beside him, his face pale but eyes blazing. "Still with me?" Davis yelled. "Barely." "Then move. We can't stay here." They pushed forward, crawling from cover to cover. Sand stung their faces. Bullets chewed the ground inches from their hands. Above, machine gun nests spat fire from the cliffs. The smell of smoke, wet earth, and death filled every breath. For an eternity, maybe 10 minutes, time stopped mattering. It was just survival, instinct, motion. Finally, Miller and a handful of others reached the base of the cliff, pressed against rock and shadow. Hanley appeared beside them, shouting over the noise. "We're regrouping here. Engineers are clearing the path. We'll climb when the word comes." Miller nodded, breath ragged. He reached for his diary. Somehow, miraculously, it was still in his chest pocket, wet but intact. Diary, 7:05 a.m. We made it off the sand. I don't know how. Davis says he can't hear anything. Maybe his ears are gone from the shelling. The cliffs rise above us like walls. We're supposed to climb them. God help us. He looked back toward the sea and saw the scale of it. Hundreds of ships, thousands of men, smoke rising, waves breaking over the bodies of the fallen. Freedom had a terrible price. Evening fell over Omaha Beach like a shroud. The sun dipped behind the cliffs, casting long shadows over the battered sand. Smoke lingered, curling lazily in the last light. Miller sat on a small rise behind a destroyed barricade. His uniform was soaked and torn. His rifle rested across his knees, hands trembling. Around him lay silence, punctuated by distant cries and the faint crash of waves. Davis limped up, blood dried along his forearm. "We made it," he said softly. Miller nodded, staring toward the water. "Yeah, we made it." The diary came out again, damp but still readable. He scribbled furiously. June 6, 1944. Today we survived. We landed on hell itself. I saw men fall like trees in a storm. I saw courage, too. In places I never expected. We're alive. Somehow, we're alive. He looked around at the faces of his comrades. Some crying, some silent, some laughing at the absurdity of still being alive. The quiet moments were fleeting, yet they clung to life more than the roar of guns. We're not heroes, not yet. We are just men, breathing, bleeding, holding on. If anyone finds this, tell them we did what we had to do, and that we thought of home when we could. Miller gazed across the beach, at the skeletal remains of the landing crafts and the red-stained sand. Somewhere out there, other boys were still fighting. Somewhere, mothers waited. Somewhere, God watched. He closed the notebook, pressed it to his chest, and exhaled deeply. The air smelled of salt, smoke, and rain. Life, death, and hope all tangled together. Diary. Final entry. Tonight, I write because I can. Tomorrow, we march inland. Tomorrow, history waits for us again. I pray we survive to see it. The sea was calm now, a deceptive mirror over the chaos it had carried. Miller stayed silent, letting the sounds of the waves wash over him. He thought of Ohio, of home, of his parents, of all the young faces he had seen vanish in a morning that would never be forgotten. And in that stillness, he realized, surviving D-Day was only the beginning. Private James Miller survived the first hours of Normandy. He would live to see St. Lo, to fight in the hedgerows, and to write more of his diary as history unfolded. But tonight, this night, the crossing and landing would remain carved into his memory forever, a testament to courage, fear, and the bonds of men thrown into fire together. The wind carried whispers of distant artillery. Stars began to pierce the dark sky above. The waves lapped quietly against the shore, indifferent to the chaos of men. Miller tucked his notebook away, feeling the weight of both loss and survival. He thought, if we survive this, we will remember every name, every face, every step. History isn't written by medals or headlines. It's written by the men who walked through hell and kept their humanity intact. Somewhere in the shadows, Davis laughed quietly at a private joke, a spark of life in the desolation. Miller smiled faintly. Together they would move forward, one step at a time, into the unknown. The night stretched on, endless, yet somehow calm. Tomorrow they would climb. Tomorrow they would fight again. But tonight, they were alive. And for Private James Miller, that was enough. Somewhere in the shadows, Davis laughed quietly at a private joke. A spark of life in the desolation. Miller smiled faintly. Together they would move forward, one step at a time, into the unknown.